guys, welcome to EduRise. Today we'll be doing mathematics paper 1 November 2022. I'm not going to do the whole question paper. They are just sitting questions that I'm going to extract from the question paper, such as from question 1, those 1.4 and 1.5 questions which most of learners struggle with, and also on functions, how to analyze your functions before you tackle your questions, and also the one of which everyone kind of struggles the most with, which is calculus. So from question 1, November 2022, there are 2 sitting questions that I want to do with you guys. It's algebra. It's this kind of questions I'm talking about. It says that show that 2.5n minus 5 to the exponent n plus 1 plus 5n plus 2. It says that show this expression that you're given here is even for all positive values of n. Show that it is even for all positive integer values of n. Right? So guys, for these kind of questions, there is no structure, right, in which like you will follow like steps, methods that you will follow to answer these questions. These questions are basically just to test your general knowledge of algebra, right? So that is why most learners find it difficult to answer this type of questions, right? So it says that you must show that this expression is even for all positive integer values of n. So now guys, we know that positive even integers have to be at least multiplied by a multiple of 2, right? Because any number that you multiply by 2, at the end you will get what? An even number, meaning that answer that you get is going to be divisible by what? By 2. For instance, if you take 15 and then you say 15 times 2, 15 times 2 is going to give you what? 30. 30 is even integer, which is what? Divisible by 2. When you divide 30 by 2, you get what? 15 again. If you take 11 times 2, you're going to get what? You're going to get 22, which is 22 is divisible by what? By 2. It's going to give you what? 11. So this is basically what you are trying to figure out from here. So from what we see here, we are given 2 times 5 to the exponent n minus 5n plus 1 plus 5 raised to the exponent n plus 2. So from your basic laws of exponents, what you are going to do in such a situation like this is that you are going to split what your bases. For the first one, it's going to be 2 raised to the exponent 1 times 5 raised to the exponent 1 minus 5 raised to the exponent n times 5 to the exponent 1 plus 5 raised to the exponent n times 5 to the exponent 2. And then guys, what you're seeing from here, right, is that we have a common multiple there, which is what? It's 5 raised to the exponent n. So what you can do now is to take out this multiple, which will be 5 to raise to the exponent n. When you take out 5 to raise to the exponent n, you'll be left with 2 raised to the exponent 1 minus 5 raised to the exponent 1 plus 5 raised to the exponent 2. So guys, you have to make sure that when you take out a multiple, you must also double check that when you multiply that multiple back, it's going to give you what? The previous expression, right? So for instance here, 5 to the exponent n times 2 to the exponent 1 is going to give you what? 2 times 5 to the exponent n. And then 5 to the exponent n multiplied by negative 5 to the exponent 1 is going to give you what? 5n plus 1, because when you multiply the base, when you multiply terms of the same base, you keep the base and add what? The exponent. So now we will have what? 5 raised to the exponent n, and then now you just simply press that into the calculator. 2 to the exponent 1 minus 5 to the exponent 1 plus 5 to the exponent 2, and then it's going to give you what? 22. Therefore we have 22 times 5 to the exponent n. So now guys, as you can see, from what I was explaining earlier, 22 is an even positive integer. So whatever n value that we may have there, when we for instance, if we say let n be equals to 1, for instance, we're going to have 22 times 5 to the exponent 1, of which that's going to give us what? 22 times 5, that's going to give us 110. I'm just making an example so you can actually see what you are talking about. So you're going to get 110. 110 is divisible by what? By 2, of which is going to give you what? 55. You see, that is what the question was looking for from you. So okay, now we can move on to the next question, which is question 1.4. It says that you must determine the values of x and y if, and then they gave us this expression, which is 3 raised to exponent y plus 1 divided by 32 is equals to root 96 raised to the exponent x. So again guys, here we apply the laws of what? Of exponents. Your target in this kind of question is to make sure that whatever is on the right is the same as what is on the left, right? So for instance, 3 raised y exponent 1 divided by 32 is equals to what? 96 raised to the exponent x root. So what you must make sure here is that the left hand side is equals to the right hand side, right? Whatever you do on your left, you must also do it on your right. So since I've said that you are using the laws of exponent, right, you must write everything that you have in what? In terms of exponents. The numerator is already written in terms of exponents, which is 3 raised y plus 1 divided by 32 is 2 raised to the exponent 5, right? And then is equals to. Now for this part, you're going to write your root in exponential form. So we have 96x raised to exponent what? A half. Now we have our right hand side, right? You saw our left hand side as 3 raised y plus 1 divided by 2 to the exponent 5. Now we must make sure that our right hand side as well is the same as what is the left hand side. So we must change this 96 into a fraction that looks the same as what? As the one on the right hand side. The bases actually must be the same, right? Regardless of the exponent. So it's gonna be 1 plus 1 divided by 2 to the exponent 5 is equals to. Now you have to change 96, right? You have to write it in terms of 3 and 2. So 96 is actually 32 times 3. And that 32, we can also write it as what? As 2 to the exponent 5, which is 2 to the exponent 5 times, right? 3. Or raised to what? To the exponent x over 2. I made a mistake there. This was supposed to be x here over 2, right? And then now we distribute our brackets. We have 3 raised y plus 1 over 2 to the exponent 5 is equals to 2 times, it's going to be 5 times x over 2 is going to be 5x over 2 times 3 is to x over 2, right? Okay guys, now what you can also do from the left hand side now is to say 3 is to y plus 1 times what 2 to the exponent negative 5. Must remember guys, when you move a term from the denominator to the numerator, the base remains the same, but the sign of the exponent changes into a negative sign. If it was positive in the denominator, when it goes to the numerator, it becomes negative. When it's negative from the denominator and it's going to the numerator, it becomes positive. So in our case, it's going to be negative 5, and then we have 2 is to 5x over 2 times 3 is to x over 2. Now guys, what do you see? You can see that on our left hand side we have 3 times 2, and also on our left hand side we have 2 times, on our right hand side we have 2 times 3. So what do the laws of exponents say? Is that if you have the same base, if you have two terms of the same base multiplying each other, you keep the base and what? And add the exponent. So it's like, it's gonna be 3 there and plus 1. So the same principle applies even here. So we'll have what? Y plus 1 is going to be equals to this guy, which is x over 2, right? And then 2 to the exponent negative 5 is going to be equals to negative 5 is going to be equals to, you are just focusing on the basis, because remember guys, this is an equal sign. So logically, what is already on the left hand side is equals to the right hand side. So this 3 to the exponent y plus 1 is equals to 3 raised to exponent x over 2. This 2 to the negative 5 is equals to what? 2 to the 5 over x over 2. So you keep your base. If the bases are the same, you equate what? Your exponents. So that's what I'm doing over here. So it's gonna be negative 5 is equals to 5x over 2. And then now you just solve your mathematically as usual, cross multiply, and then you have negative 10 is equals to 5x, and then you divide x by 5, divide by 5, and therefore x is equals to what? Negative 2. You see, 5x and then blah blah blah. Okay, and then now we can substitute what? This negative 5 from there, which will be y plus 1 is equals to negative 2. In place of x, we're going to put our already existing x, which is negative 2. So we'll have negative 2 over 2, right? And then we have y is equals to, because negative 2 over 2 is going to be negative 1, and then that, when you transpose this one to this side, you're going to get negative 1 again, and therefore y is equals to negative 2. Right, so your x and your y are both equals to negative 2. So now to double check your calculations, you just take your answers and then you substitute them back to your original equation. Now to check that your left hand side is surely equals to your left hand side. So now we're going to say 3 raised to the exponent of negative 2 plus 1 divided by 32, and then you get 1 over 96. And then you come to our right hand side, you're going to have 96 raised to exponent of negative 2 as well. And then you're going to get what? 1 over 96. Therefore, these values are true indeed. So we are done with this question. If you have anything that you don't understand, you can just comment on the section below so that we can try and assist you again. So now we are moving to the functions. We are moving to the functions. First question is going to be question 4 on November 2024. So we have question 4. Question 4 and then we are given the sketch. They've given us the sketch. I'm just copying what's the question. Right, 0, 1, and then you have 2 there, and then we have this other half H, and then one other half here. Yeah, so guys, that's our graph, and then the equation is h of x is equals to 1 over x plus p plus q. And then we are also okay, so the question reads as follows. Question 4, right? Sketch below is the graph of h of x is equals to 1 over x plus p plus q. Now they told us that the asymptotes of h intersect at this point. So our asymptotes intersect at 1 is to 2, which you can see there from the diagram. There, our asymptotes intersect at that point. Okay, so guys, before tackling the questions, right, from what you see from the observations of the sketch that is already here, you must analyze the question before you answer, right? You must analyze the sketch before you tackle the questions, right? It's what I call a glossary list. You just write down whatever that is there that you are given. So what you are given from this is that we are given the intersection point for the asymptotes, which is there. We are already given. So we know that the x value of the x value of the asymptote represent what? The vertical asymptote, right? So our vertical asymptote, so this means that you already have our x, which is x is equals to 1, and then our horizontal asymptote, which is our y there, is given as what? Is 2. Y is equals to 2. And then you can see that this graph also has what? Both the x-intercept and the y-intercept, but it's not given from what? From the graph. So we might have to determine those later on the question. So this is my glossary list, and then now we're moving to the first question. The first question says that write down the values of p and q, and it's 2 marks. It says that write down. It didn't say determine. When it says determine, it means you must calculate. But when it says write down, it means you are just copying what's already on the sketch or what you are already given. Because guys, you must be always aware of time in an exam. You must not waste time on things that can be easily done. Right. So we want the value of p and the value of q. So to get the value of p, right, it's going to be, you're going to take what's in the denominator and then you're going to equate it to 0. So we have x plus p is equals to 0. But guys, we are already given what? Our x is what? It's 1. So x plus p is equals to 0, and therefore p is equals to -1. I suggest most of you guys to do it this way, because some of you, they always make a mistake to confuse the value of x and p, because you must remember that if your graph is shifted to the right, therefore that means that your p is what? Is negative. But if your graph is shifted to the left, therefore that means that your p value, it's what? It's positive. And then q is simply what? 2. Does a 2 marks. So now moving to 4.1.2. 4.1.2 says that calculate the coordinates of the x-intercept of h. You see what I was talking about? We had the intercept there, so surely the question was going to ask. So now it says that we must determine the x-intercepts. So we must first write our equation in a normal way. So we have 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. So you must remember that when you are determining the x-intercept, you always let y be equals to 0. So we have 1 over x minus 1 plus 2 is equals to 0. And then you have 1 over x minus 1 is equals to negative 2. Cross multiply x minus 1 times x minus 1. Therefore, these two cancel. You have 1 is equals to negative 2x plus 2. And then you solve for x. You have 1 minus 2 is equals to negative 2x, which is negative 1 is equals to negative 2x. And therefore, you have negative 2 over negative 2. And therefore, x is equals to 1 over 2. That's it. So now our x-intercept is what? It's half. So we have half is to 0. Right. And then now moving to question 4.1.3. 4.1.3 says that write down the x coordinate of the x-intercept of g if g of x is equals to h. So if g of x is equals to h into x plus 3. So as this question are quite obvious, what it means is that from your graph G, wherever you see x, you are going to add what? 3. Not that you are going to, it doesn't mean that in place of x you have to put the 3, but where there is x, you just have to add what? 3. So g of x is going to be equals to 1 over x minus 1 plus 3 plus 2. Therefore, g of x is equals to 1 over x plus 2 plus 2. That is what the question means. It means that next to x, you just add what? 3. If it said my x minus 3, then we are going to subtract the negative 3. So now it says that you must write down the x coordinate of the x-intercept of g. So now you just determine your x-intercept now. So you let your y is equals to 0. And then you have 1 over x plus 2 plus 2. And therefore negative 2. Again, you cross multiply. X plus 2 is equals to 1. Negative 2x minus 4 is equals to 1. Running out of space. And then we have negative 2x is equals to 5, and therefore you divide by negative 2 by negative. Therefore your x-intercept will be negative 5 over 2. That's it. And then moving to 4.1.4. 4.1.4, it says that determine the equation of the axis of symmetry. So they've given us this equation, right, which is y is equals to x plus t, and then they're asking us to determine what? The value of t. Determine the value of t. So guys, what you must remember is that the axis of symmetry are lines that cut your graph into 2 equal parts. For instance, if we come back to this sketch, if we talk about the axis of symmetry on this graph, our axis of symmetry will actually pass through what? The point where our asymptotes what? Intersect. Like that. So these lines, as I've said, they are the lines that cut what? Your graph into 2 equal parts. So the nice thing about this is that we already have what our asymptotes, the point where they intersect, which was that 1 and 2. So this one is pretty straightforward. So it's pretty straightforward. What you're going to do there, you just substitute the point where your asymptotes intersect. So you have y is equals to x plus t, and then you substitute the point 1 is to 2. So 2 is equals to 1 plus t. Therefore t is equals to 2 minus 1, which is t is equals to 1. Therefore t is equals to 1. And then now moving to the last question, which is 4.1.5, which is my favorite because most learners, they always struggle with these ones. It always gives them a bit of a headache, but I promise you guys I'm gonna make it as much as easy as possible so that you guys can try at least to understand these questions, because seriously, most learners, they lose marks in this type of questions. We call them what? The interval questions. They're called interval questions, where sometimes you'll be asked like, determine where f of x is greater than 0, h of x times g of x is less than or equals to -1. Just, yeah, that's the type of questions. So it says that determine the values of x for which -2 is less than or equals to 1 over x minus 1. So guys, this question, right, it says that we must determine for which values of x is -2 less than or equals 1 over x minus 1. So guys, what you must do is always try to simplify first. So you must always make sure over the interval you must always have a 0 on that side. So now if you transpose here, we're going to have 0 is less than or equals to 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. Now guys, if you look, this is h of x, the function that you were given. This is our h of x, 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. Please guys, you must always first simplify. You must make sure over your interval there is always a 0 there, right? So we have 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. So now basically what this question asks us is that we must determine where h of x, which is our function, is always greater than or equals to 0. So now returning to this question, right, I'm gonna try to use different markers so you guys can see what I'm actually talking about. This question actually asks us, where is our function greater than 0? When the interval says that it is greater than 0, it means we are looking for the point whereby our function is above the x-axis. Because if our function is below the x-axis, therefore it is negative on that area. I'm gonna use red for negative, and then I'm gonna use blue for what? For positive, right? So if you check here guys, at our x-intercept, of which we calculated earlier and we got it as what? As a half. If you look here guys, our function at this point is below the x-axis, and at that point it is what? It is negative, right? But at this point it is above what? The x-axis, and it is positive. And then again at this point our function is above the x-axis, and again it is what? It is positive there. And then I'm gonna use this highlight to show you guys the x-axis. This is our x-axis here. So you can clearly see guys that at this point where x is equals to half, basically our x-intercept, if we move from the x intercept and then you go further and further and further to the left, you can see that our function is always above the x-axis, and it's going to be like that up until negative infinity. This function at this point where x is less than a half, it will forever be positive. It will forever be above the x-axis. It will never touch the x-axis again, right? And then again, if you check, when our x, right, is greater than a half, meaning now we are approaching the left hand side, our function is, oh sorry, if you check at this point x where it is equals to 1, I'm making a mistake there. At the point x is equals to 1, our function again is forever above the x-axis. It will forever remain there. It will forever be positive. So guys, what I'm trying to show you is that when our x is less than a half, this function is always above the x-axis, of which is positive. And then when this function is greater than 1, it is also above the x-axis. So now the question is, how do you write that down? You are going to say, when your x is less than or equals to a half, your function will forever be positive. Or when your x is greater than 1. Now I know some of you may ask like, why your intervals are different? Why this one is less than or equals to, and then why isn't this one supposed to be x greater than or equals to 1? Guys, remember, we cannot say it is equals to 1 because that one is the vertical asymptote. So if you say it is x greater than or equals to 1, then you are saying your function will become it's not gonna be defined. Yeah, it's the word I'm trying to look for. Sorry guys, it's not gonna be defined, it's gonna be undefined, because the vertical asymptote, our function doesn't exist there. It's undefined at this point, because if you substitute x, if you say it is also x greater than or equals to 1, then you are saying 1 minus 1 plus 2, of which you're gonna get 1 over 0 plus 2. And then this thing is undefined. If you press it on your calculator, you're gonna get what? Undefined. So hence I said that our x is less than or equals to a half, because you will substitute a half in place of x, therefore you're gonna get something. But if you say x is greater than or equals to 1, then you're absolutely wrong. You're just gonna lose one of the marks. So please guys, you must always check your denominator. So you cannot include the asymptote, the vertical asymptote, because if you do that, you're gonna get an error. Right. So now we are moving on to the next question, which is 4.2. Now we are moving to 4.2. Now we are moving to 4.2. On 4.2, we are given f of x. F of x is equals to x squared minus 4x minus 5, and g of x is equals to a times 2 to the exponent x plus q. Let me sketch the diagram for you guys again. So this is what you are given. This is what you are given. I understand you guys are writing tomorrow, but don't be scared guys. I promise you, if you study and then you trust in yourself, then everything is going to be fine. So this is our functions. This is how they look like. This is our g of x. This is our g of x. Praying and not putting your effort won't help you with nothing. You just pray, ask God to be there with you, and then you must also put in input, because if you are not doing anything, then you are going to fail actually. Because if you don't study and then You pray, you rely on your prayer, and then you expect you're going to pass without you putting your own effort. You're going to fail, actually. But here, guys, I'm trying to do all my best to make everything obvious to you. And then we have D, and then we have C here, and then we have our O, which is the origin. So guys, I'm going to use the red ink to represent G of X, and then I'm going to use blue to represent F of X. Right. I suggest also you guys to carry your markers in an exam tomorrow, so just to make things clear for you, né? Because they always help into like seeing everything quite well, other than just focusing on the black ink only and the white paper. You can just also use some colors, they might be helpful. So now what you are given, guys, is that they've told us that E and H are the x-intercepts of F of X, and then this is G of X. Okay, and then they told us that C is the y-intercept of F and lies on the asymptote of G. So I'm gonna use the line marker to represent what? The asymptote of G. Guys, you must remember that the asymptote never touches the function. Sorry, the function never touches the asymptote. Okay, and then they told us that the two graphs, they intersect at point D, which they intersect at this point. So guys, what do you know about when two graphs are intersecting? Of course, when two graphs intersect at that point, they are equal. Whenever the statement tells you that no, these two graphs intersect at this certain point, you must know immediately when two graphs intersect, they are equal to one another. That's the important information that most of the learners, they miss. So now the first question says that write down the y coordinate of C. Again, it says write down, don't calculate, and it's 1 mark. You just, from what you observed from the graph, you just write it down. And then once you notice, guys, that between the two functions, G of X is incomplete because you have two unknowns there, but for F of X is complete. We are given everything about F of X. So C, they've told us that C is the y-intercept of F, right? Is the y-intercept of F. So the y-intercept of F, this means that from F of X, from our graph there, our y-intercept is what? It's -5. So C coordinates are 0 and -5. There, from our graph, you can see there, the constant is -5. Therefore, that means our y-intercept is C. Sorry, -5. And then for point 2, it says that determine the coordinates of D. It says that you must determine the coordinates of D. Again, guys, we don't have much information about G, so put G aside for now because you have two unknowns there, and this question is only 2 marks. You don't have to go and determine those variables because we are not yet there. Use the information that is given to you. So for F of X, we have everything, and they told us that D is the turning point of F. So D is the turning point of F. But my sketch here looks a bit of wobbling. It's not actually, it's just a sketch, guys, come on. I didn't use the precisions, like the correct methods to just put it, you see, top notch. But yeah, guys, they told us from the statement, we're just focusing on the statement that have given us. They told us that the two graphs intersect at D, so the turning point of F. So what do you know about the turning point of the parabola? We are using this formula there. X is equals to negative b over 2a. So you're going to substitute negative is to negative 4 divided by 2 is to 1. And then you just simply type that into your calculator. Negative 4 over 2 is to times 1. And then you're going to get 2. So now we know our x value at d, but now we need y. So to get y, you just substitute your x value to the function. So f of 2 is equals to 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 5, of which you're going to give you 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 5. That's going to give us negative 9. So now d, our coordinate d is 2 and negative 9. So we know our coordinate at this point, it's 2 and negative 9, and then it's c, 0 and negative 5. Right, now we move on to the next question, 4.2.3. Now 4.2.3 says that we must determine the values of a and q. Now guys, at c, we were told that c is the y-intercept of f, right? And lies on the asymptote of g. So this means that c is also what? An asymptote of g. So we know that q is what? Is negative 5 because it is an asymptote of g, right? So now we can write our formula. G of x is equals to a2 to the exponent x minus 5. And then now to get to a, we can substitute point d, because point d lies on both functions g and what? And f. So now we have point d, which is 2 and negative 9. So we can just substitute. Negative 9 is equals to a2 to the exponent 2 minus 5, and then transpose negative 9 plus 5 is equals to 4a, because 2 raised 2 is 4, and therefore you divide everything by 4. Therefore a is equals to negative 9 plus 5 divided by 4. That's going to give you negative 1, right? So now we have our variables there, and therefore g of x is equals to what? Negative 2x squared minus 5. That's a, right? And then now we move on to our next question. It says that we must write down the range of g. So the next question, 4.2.4, it says that we must write down the range of g. So now guys, the range of the exponential function is always y is an element of real numbers, because whatever value that you substitute there of y is always going to give you a solution, right? That's it. So now we move on to the next question. We move on to question 5. Question 5. We move on to question 5. Right. So sorry guys, I had to handle some business there, but now I'm back. Okay, question 5. So again, I'm gonna sketch what is given. We are given that in that. Right. We're given this and that. And then we have our point. Oh, my point D is quite close. But guys, please, point D is not passing on the origin. It's just slightly behind the original. It's not 0 there, our coordinates. and then also we have B there, our y-intercept, and then we have C, the x-intercept again, and then we have A, the intersection point, and then we have G, and then we have C. Again, I'm gonna use different colors. What you are given here, guys, is just the function and the inverse of the function, right? Again, I'm gonna use different colors. Please, guys, B, let me write it down. B is the y-intercept. It's not passing on the origin. B is the y-intercept, and then D is the x-intercept. It doesn't pass on the origin as well. Both those points, they are not passing on the origin. They are not passing on the origin, right? Okay, guys, we are told that g of x is equals to 2x plus 6, right? And we are also given g prime, which is the inverse, but we are not told what is g prime. And we are told that D and B are the x and y intercepts of G. So D and B are the x and y intercept of G. And C is the x intercept of the inverse function. And then the graphs, they intersect at A. So now what is the first question? The first question says that 5.1 says write down the y coordinate of B. So now we are actually looking for the y-intercept. So guys, come on. It says write down. So we are not calculating anything. We are just getting straight to it. So from g of x, again, guys, we are not given anything about the inverse function. So you just focus on the function that is given to you, right? So we are given 2x. G of x is equals to 2x plus c. That's where we are going to get most of the information. So now g of x is equals to 2 of x plus 6. So they want the coordinates of B, and we were told that B is the y-intercept. So it's straightforward again. So the coordinates of B is going to be 0 and 6. There is it. It's 6, because at this point, this is the y-axis. The x is 0 at that point. And then moving to the next question, it says that determine the equation now of the inverse of G. In terms, in the form G is equals to mx plus n. So guys, you know, when you are doing the inverse of a function, you are just switching x and y. So we are given the g of x is equals to 2 of x plus 6. So now you are just going to switch the two. X is equals to 2 times g of x plus 6. And then you have x, you transpose 6 because you have to make g of x the subject of the formula. X minus 6 is equals to 2 g of x, and you divide everything by 2 by 2 by 2. Therefore g of x is equals to half x minus 3. Therefore g prime is equals to half of x minus 3. So now this is the equation of the inverse. The inverse. Right. And then 5.3, it says that determine the coordinates of A. So guys, at point A, as I've said earlier, at point A, when your functions, they intersect around the point, at that point, those two functions are what? Are equal. So what do I mean by equal? I mean that g of x is equals to g inverse, right? So what is g of x? G of x is equals to 2x plus 6, and then g prime is equals to half x minus 3, and then you solve algebra, and then 2 of x minus half x is equal to negative 3 minus 6, and then 2 minus a half. Gonna get 3 over 2. X is equals to negative 9, and therefore you divide everything by 3 over 2. Divide by 3 over 2. X is equals to negative 9 divided by 3 over 2. That's going to give you negative 6. So at A, our x is negative 6. And then here's a catch, guys. After you get your x value on the point of intersection between the two graphs, you can substitute that x value to any of the two functions to get what your y value. And then you're going to say 2 times negative 6 in this case plus 6, and therefore that's going to give you 2 times negative 6 plus 6. That's going to give you negative 6. And therefore your points at A is negative 6 and negative 6. And when you substitute again to the inverse half, we're gonna say negative 6 minus 6, minus 3. You're gonna get negative 6 again. So you have your coordinates there, negative 6 and negative 6. Right, and then now we'll move on to the next question. The next question says that calculate the length of AB. This one is easy. Grade 9 work, grade 8 in fact. Grade 9? Yeah, grade 9. Because that's when they were introduced to us the distance formula. So 5.4, they are saying that we must determine the length of AB. Determine length of AB. So now guys, we have both coordinates for B and A. For B we have 0 and 6 coordinates, and then for A we have negative 6 and negative 6. And then so AB is equals to, you don't have to memorize this formula, it will be provided at the back of your exam paper, so you don't have to worry about it. So AB is equals to, so you just substitute your point, x2 is going to be 0 minus 6 squared plus, and then it's going to be 6 minus 6 squared. Therefore AB is equals to 0 minus 6 squared plus 6 minus 6 all squared. We're going to get 6 root 5 units. I suggest you guys not to convert your length because it's gonna give you the decimal, and when you get the decimal, you guys want to round it off, which sometimes that may be a disadvantage because you're not gonna get the accurate exact answer. So please, you can just leave it that way in a set form, or you can just write both the set form and the decimal form if you want it, which will be 13.42 units. But please, when you substitute for your calculation, use the 6 root 5, the third one. Right, and then now moving to this one, it says that calculate the area of triangle ABC. Ooh. So now we must calculate the area now of triangle ABC. Now this requires trigonometry, guys. So now if we are looking there, this is triangle ABC. So now we are going to join B and C. Right? You're going to join B and C there. Let me use another color to show the length between B and C. There is it. B and C, right? So now guys, we have the length for AB, which is 6 root 5. And then guys, please do not assume that this is a right angle triangle. A right angle triangle is the one with a 90 degree on it. Please do not assume that BC is perpendicular to AC. Please do not assume unless you can prove it. But please do not assume it because you're going to lose marks, because nothing says that those two lines are perpendicular to one another. Now, in order for you to say this triangle is perpendicular, you must prove that the gradient of BC multiplied by the gradient of AC is always going to give you a product of what? -1. So the gradient of BC multiplied by the gradient of AC is always going to give you -1. That's how you can say now those two lines are perpendicular to one another. You don't assume in mathematics unless you have something to prove, because most of you, they tend to assume on this kind of questions. Please, again, do not assume those two lines are perpendicular, right? So one thing you must remember, guys, from trigonometry, we have that formula for area, which says that half AB times sine A. On this question, this is what you are going to use. We are going to use this formula here. So in order to use this formula, we must find both lengths of the opposite sides. We already have AB. Now let's calculate AC, the length of AC. But guys, we don't have the coordinates of C, so we first need to find the coordinates of C, and C lies on the inverse function, so we need the x-intercept of the inverse. So the inverse function was half x minus 3, and then now we want the x-intercept there, so we're gonna have 0 is equals to half x, let y be equals to 0, and then you have 3 is equals to half x, and therefore x is equals to 3 divided by half. 3 divided by 0.5, therefore is 6. So our coordinates at C, it's 6 and 0. So now we can determine the length AC. So AC is equals to, I don't have to write the formula again, guys, come on. So it's gonna be 6 minus 6 squared plus 0 minus 6 squared, and therefore AC, I think it's gonna be the same as AB. 6 minus 6 squared plus 0 minus 6 squared. Yes, it's 6 root 5 units. So guys, we have two of our sides. So A and B, we have them, but now what do we need? We need the angle. We need this angle now. So to get this angle, right, to get this angle, what you can do is to use a cos rule, because now we have these two lengths, but in order for the cos rule to be used, you must have 3 sides, right? So now we're going to need the length of BC. So we also have to calculate BC. Guys, mathematics is various and it's broad, so we can have different approaches, but for the fact that you are going to get the same answer at the end, then it's fine. But you can, if you see another, because I see another method in which you can use it, but I prefer this one, because whatever method that you think like you can use, therefore it's okay to use it. But again, mathematics is various, so different approaches, but what matters the most is to get the same answer at the end. So BC is going to be equals to 6 minus 0 squared plus 0 minus 6, right? So calculating the length of BC, therefore BC is equals to root 6 minus 0 squared plus 0 minus 6 squared, therefore it's going to be 6 root 2 units. So now we have this one, which is 6 root 2 units, and then now we can go ahead and calculate our angle. So now we can, so guys, this triangle looks like this, you know? So we have 6 root 2 here, and then here we have 6 root 5, and then here we have 6 root 5. We are looking for this angle. So now we can use our cos rule. So we know the cos rule is 6 root 2 all squared is equals to 6 root 5 all squared plus 6 root 5 all squared minus 2 times 6 root 5 cos A. I'm not gonna waste any time from this. I'm just gonna get straight to solve this. 6 root 2 all squared minus 6 root 5 all squared minus 6 root 5 squared minus 2 6 root 5. Please guys, be careful of the signs. One single mistake can make everything wrong, so you must double check your signs. Then from here you take the cos inverse because we're looking for A. Therefore A is equals to cos inverse 4 over 5. You're gonna get 36.87 degrees. So that is our angle there. Our angle at that point, it's 36.87 degrees. And then so now we just substitute to our equation. So area of a triangle ABC is equals to half times 6 root 5 times 6 root 5. On an area you don't use the side that is opposite the angle, and then times sine 36.87. Therefore our answer is half 6 root 5 times 6 root 5 sine 36.87. Therefore we're going to get 54 units. Remember, area is squared, so it's going to be 54 units squared. That's it guys, that's it. So again guys, please do not assume, unless stated otherwise, that those two lines are perpendicular to one another, right? So I can show you, just to clarify this thing, that these two lines are not perpendicular to one another. We can just calculate the gradient of BC. So if you take out the gradient of BC, it's gonna be equals to 0 minus the coordinates of B were 0 and 6, so it's gonna be 0 minus 6 divided by 6 minus 0 again. This is gonna give you what? 0 minus 6 divided by 6 minus 0. That's gonna give you -1. The gradient of AC, we already have it from the inverse function, which is half, I think. Yes, it's half. Right. So now guys, for lines to be perpendicular, the product of their gradients must give you what? -1. So now let's multiply and check. We're going to get -1. So -1 times a half, as you can see, this is equals to -1/2. Therefore those two lines are not what? Perpendicular to one another. You see, I proved it. So in mathematics, you don't just assume, but if you assume, you must back it up with a proof, so then we can accept it. So guys, that is how that question went out.